Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atākura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Welcome everyone to today's Strategy and Policy Committee meeting. Got the bell now. Please let me or the Democracy Advisor know if you intend to leave the meeting. Morning tea will be at 10:30 if we're not finished before. Apologies. So I have an apology for Mayor Foster, who is on council business, and I've got an apology for Councillor Foon for lateness, and I think that's all. Oh, Councillor Rush is on Zoom. Are there any other apologies, councillors? Nope. So being that those are the only apologies, do I have a seconder? Thank you. So Deputy Mayor Free, and I now put, is there any debate on those? No, that's good. So I'm now going to put that to the vote. Not that I can vote, I'll just go and get my thing. Oh, here we go, thank you. I can vote. You can vote if you'd like. This is on apologies. Yeah, we've just got the Mayor for not being here for council business and Councillor Foon for lateness.
And Councillor Sparrow for being here.
Councillor Young, okay. So that is carried. Conflict of interest declarations. A call on members to declare any conflicts of interest they may have in relation to the items on the agenda. No, being that there are none, we'll move on. Confirmation of minutes. I move the motion that the Strategy and Policy Committee meeting approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of November 2020, having been circulated, and they be taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of that meeting. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Is there any debate about that? Nope. I now put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Please vote. So I'll move around. So that's carried. There are no items not on the agenda, and this morning we have two public participants. So I'd like to welcome Andrew Wilkes from Victoria University of Wellington, who is going to talk to us about the lease of the Outer Greenbelt land. No, my Andrew, thank you for coming to talk with us today. So you've got 10 minutes, and there could be some questions for you within that time, if there is some. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou, thanks for having me along. So I'm talking to why you guys should endorse the leasing us some land in the Outer Greenbelt. I just wanted to kind of run through our motivations for why we engaged with you guys and trying to get this happening for us. So we consider ourselves to be a civic university and wanting to contribute more to the society that we're operating in. And the City Council is obviously a very key player in that. So we want to grow the relationship between the university and the city and our residents, and we see this as a great opportunity to do that. Furthermore, the opportunity for our staff, our students and our alumni to get hands-on involved with actually putting some trees in the ground and giving them that opportunity to really connect to our zero carbon plan and to the biodiversity benefits that brings is fantastic. We want to be able to grow their connection to nature and their appreciation for all the services that it provides for humanity. Next, we're interested, obviously, in supporting the biodiversity benefits for the city and the recreational aspects that this project would bring as well. And then a big thing for us is we don't have a whole lot of land available to the university. We're not like some other universities that have got big endowment lands. So having a piece of land close by to the university that becomes a teaching and research resource for our staff and students is very important to us. We've already got our School of Biological Sciences and Centre for Science and Society expressing quite a lot of interest, and I've got some projects up and running already in looking at the site. And then the last point, I guess, is the connection into our zero carbon plan, and the need to have some fairly serious action around mitigating climate change. A lot of government action on that yesterday. But so we're pretty ambitious in the climate space, and the zero carbon plan for us aims to be net zero carbon emissions by 2030. And so this is one of the avenues in which we can grow that, and it supports nicely your Te Arakura plan as well. So that's kind of our background as to why we want to do it, and to give you a bit of kind of history as well. This isn't just the first cab off the rank for us. We've been working with you guys on tree planting projects through our Growing Graduates program for the past 7 years, I think it is, and putting 10,000 plus trees into the town belt at the north end of Te Ahumairangi Hill. So I should give a nice shout out to Anita Benbrook from your offices that has done outstanding work in coordinating that. And so that's been a hugely successful program for us, and with the advent of our zero carbon plan, we kind of wanted to take the opportunity to scale up that relationship and make bigger impact. So that's why we reached out to Tim and co behind us there. Shout out to him as well. Probably a good 18 months or so ago to get this process rolling, and so now here we are today at the very exciting juncture of hopefully turning this into reality. So that's our piece. Any questions?
Kia ora. There is one Patai at this stage. There might be another. Councillor Pennant.
Kia ora, thanks for coming in. So look, I've just had a question raised by a constituent about public access and building. So could you just assure us publicly that there will be no building?
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, no buildings planned, just trees going into the ground.
Lovely trees, and also just that there's only a few restrictions around the public access, as I understand it from the staff and my colleague.
Yeah, we want the public to be going there and using and enjoying the space and seeing the benefit of it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. That's great.
Councillors, are there any further questions? Oh, kia ora. Thank you, Andrew. I think you've been very clear, and we appreciate you coming to kōrero with us about this exciting opportunity.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Now I'd like to welcome Michael Gibson. Thank you for coming in today, Michael. So, Michael, you've got 5 minutes. As you know, it does go very fast, so there may or may not be time for questions within that.
Support. I'm certain you've told members of the committee that I'm here to seek support of the council for my approach to the new Minister of Local Government, Nanaia Mahuta, the excellent Nanaia Mahuta, to take over aspects of the handling of the Shelley Bay affair from the council. I've tabled you will all have received an email of my complaint to the Auditor General. I've tabled my email to the Minister of Local Government. Councillors, you would have been laughed to scorn if you'd issued a statement as the Regional Council, of which I was a member for 9 years, did yesterday, giving its strongest support to the government's climate change emergency statement. This is because you have just decided to sell council land on which plans have been made to build 28 houses, low-lying harbour land. I would also like to draw your attention to words in this morning's editorial in the Dom Post. Quote, declaring a climate emergency signals an intention to act accordingly. Well, selling low-lying council land for a developer to build 28 houses on is not acting decisively in the right way. Having said that, I note that virtually all councillors who on November the 11th voted against selling the council's low-lying harbour land at Shelley Bay had also voted in the last triennium in favour of the council declaring a climate emergency in Wellington. Well done to those councillors. I note, on the other hand, that virtually all the councillors who voted to sell the low-lying land, where the developer plans to build 28 houses, are new young councillors who must be clearly unaware of the council's climate change policy and surely have not been adequately briefed on it. During the debate 3 years ago, they certainly did not refer to the developer's plans to build the 28 houses, nor did any of them refer to the secret report which mentions this and which they had received a few hours before the fatal meeting. It is a disgrace that our new younger councillors have not been briefed properly on the council's declared state of climate emergency.
Mr. Gibson, I'd ask you to be careful about discriminating against people because of their age. Please just talk about things in general, but you don't need to draw attention to people's age.
Newer, older councillors, I won't refer to them. Now I draw your attention to in my complaint to the Auditor General that the answer yes to question 2 in the suppressed report, can the ratepayer be assured that we will be paying maximum $10 million on infrastructure costs, quote, is untrue, it is misleading, it is a lie, unquote. Why didn't the council publish this report before the fatal meeting so that the advice on which you're acting could be seen? Councillors, you must begin acting as members of a public body. I also draw attention to Councillor Conda's memorandum published on page 88 of the 91 pages of the minutes of the fatal meeting concerning information which she says was suppressed from that meeting, and to the submission of former legal counsel Sally Dosser, where she drew attention to 4 matters involving council officers. I trust that the council's chief executive can report publicly very soon as to whether all councillors, not to mention the public, should be given the information mentioned by Councillor Conde. What else has been hidden? I urge you to seek the Minister's help on this. Thank you. 20 seconds for questions.
I think, unfortunately, by the time Councillor Calvert has asked her question, there won't be time for answering. So thank you very much, Mr. Gibson, for coming in today. We appreciate you taking the time to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to move on. And I forgot to mention earlier, councillors, that I'd like to acknowledge that today is International Day for People Living with Disabilities. I think it's important that we acknowledge people today. And thank you to Councillor Matthews for the amazing work that you're doing to support people. So we're going to move on to our agenda now, and we've got item 2.1, which is Victoria University of Wellington Growing Our Future project, so the lease of the Outer Green Belt land, and I'd like to invite Councillor O'Neill to introduce the report.
Awesome, very excited to be here today to introduce the Growing Our Future project, a partnership between Wellington City Council, volunteer groups, students, alumni and members of Victoria University. This project, as I understand, has been worked on since 2012. It represents a really significant, awesome part of Wellington and the kind of values that our local university holds, and I just want to start by thanking Andrew Wilkes and Grant Guilford as well. I know I can't be here, but these people have been described as like really large drivers behind the partnership, both internally. So I want to thank you for all your mahi, and I'm sure a large team of people also around you who've been really supportive in getting it to this stage. This is a really excellent and very exciting moment because it strengthens a relationship between 2 organisations. It's something that not many other councils around the country have been able to execute. But trust that when this project goes ahead, we will be looking at a beautiful stream in the area where we'll have rimu and totara and ngaio trees planted and the shrubbery coming back to life, and anybody who spends enough time in our outer green belt knows the value of bringing back a forest to our central city, and many of us also understand if you're fortunate enough to live near some of the green belts or the outer green belts, how excellent it is over lockdown to have that sense of well-being and that sense of place protected and surrounded by yourself. I'm going to keep it brief because I know we're all very busy at the moment, but I'd like to invite Councillor Paul to second the paper.
Kia ora, thanks for letting me second this paper, Councillor O'Neill, and thanks for all your mahi on this particular kaupapa, but also just generally for our biodiversity out and all of that mahi that you do. So yeah, kia ora. I just really want to thank Tim and your team for all of the work that you do, but for the really comprehensive briefings and kind of making sure that we were all super on board and understanding of this project. I think it's a really innovative, cool way to utilise the different pockets of land that we have, and I think it's a really good way to foster the different and really important relationships that we have across the city in order to reach those emissions reduction targets that we have set for ourselves, and also to the sustainability team here at Council as well for any contributions that you also added. And I do also just want to thank Andrew for all of the work that he's done, particularly with leading on the Carbon Zero by 2030 plan up at the university, which has been really instrumental, and obviously that whole sustainability team up there have been awesome, and they've also been really key in helping us to steer our implementation plan for Te Atakura First to Zero. So yeah, I guess the main thing here is that we do have a lot of land, and I think that we can be thinking creatively about the way that we use it, and not just in planting more trees, but also looking at sustainable food networks across the city. We've got lots of community groups that do a lot of the heavy lifting for us as well in terms of planting those trees and repurposing that soil and making that, I guess, sequestration potential a lot more, I guess, potent. So yeah, just want to acknowledge that, you know, in order for us to get to our goals around climate carbon reductions, that we all have to work together and really leverage those partnerships. So thanks to everyone involved, and yeah, happy as to support.
Kia ora, I'll just speak briefly to this. Having been up to that site after it was attained, was it only last year? It wasn't that long ago, maybe the year before. I can see how much of a difference this will make. Chewden Park is kind of the missing link for us in the outer green belt. There is not a lot of vegetation around, despite the fact that we actually have a really active revegetation group in Chewden Park who are working in the local community. The hills really do look quite bare, and we do need to work to make sure we have that corridor connection, because we know that the birds need to be able to get between Zealandia and the amazing bush in Tawa. So I'm really excited that this partnership can improve our outer green belt and our biodiversity in the northern suburbs. So thank you to the team for identifying this as a spot and working with Victoria University to try something different. I think it's really important that we do whatever we can to improve our environment. So yeah, thanks heaps, and I'm looking forward to seeing the planting days and being able to go up and enjoy the new bush up there. Deputy Mayor Free.
Thank you to everybody who's thought about this, because I've only just read about it, but I think it's quite timely that we try these new partnerships, and I think this could be an interesting model actually for a lot of things, like even regenerating the land around the southern landfill when we get to that stage. And of course it's very consistent with our goal to plant 2 million trees, and we need all the help we can get to plant trees and as quickly as we can to help with our climate goals. So I think it's really positive. I want to support this.
Councillor Fitzsimons.
Yeah, I just too really briefly wanted to express support for it. It feels like it's a real win-win between the university and the council, and great to see the university taking an interest in the kind of long-term future of Wellington, and I think students will really relish the chance to help plant a forest.
Councillor Pennant.
Thank you, and I'd like to reinforce the thanks to officers and to the university. I will be supporting it, but yeah, just wanted to make it sure that it was clear publicly that there would be no building on the land, and that public access will be maintained. So thank you very much, Councillor O'Neill and officers, for just getting that amendment through, just to be absolutely clear on that point, because obviously this public access to our land is a sensitive issue in the city on many sites. And so we just need to make sure that that is maintained. maintained. And just the other issue that I raised around making sure this policy is updated, because I think we just need to be clear about who we're giving these opportunities to. There's got to be a clear public process, not just people who, for the best of reasons, may approach us, but hopefully that policy work is not a very big piece of work. Councillor O'Neill, you might want to respond to that in the right of reply, but hopefully there can just be some criteria implemented to show who will get that access. But look, it's a good thing, and I think we might do quite well out of it, given the carbon price will rise.
Councillor Rush.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Pannett, the carbon price rising is of course only interesting if you sell the carbon credits. I don't think we will be doing that. I'm very happy to support this. It's a great partnership and gives, I suppose, gives us access to some student labour. I think we need to be realistic around the carbon emissions reductions and what that will do. Going forward, it will certainly allow us to meet the policy goals that we've set. It won't change what the weather will look like in 2050.
Thank you. Would you like a right of reply, Councillor O'Neill?
Sure, just very briefly to talk to and acknowledge the staff and to acknowledge Councillor Pannett's point. We have incorporated 2 amendments into the paper to be moved with the paper that just further clearly outlines that members of the public will always be allowed to access this particular land. And to talk a wee bit about, yes, I'm very excited, Sean, that we will be able to access some of that student labour, but of course as well, this is part of a graduate program and how people might seek to partake. Even you yourself could maybe be one of those people planting trees, if you'd like. As I know that you're a member up at Vic Uni as well, and that's something super exciting, isn't it? And then lastly, just to acknowledge some of the fantastic ecological work that our team has done in-house and procuring this process. Tim, Sarah, Beck, Tom, there's probably plenty before me, including Peter Gilbert and many other councillors that have also been pretty excited about this too. And just to talk a wee bit about the site as well, that a lot of care has been given to look into the remnants of the historic forest around the place, and as Councillor Day said, this can be particularly quite an excellent stakeholder in the, oh gosh, I'm speaking so many politician words at the moment, but like a really fantastic park and a place to be in Shurton Park, which I know is very needed, and we do have a really active group up there that's particularly also quite excited about this too.
All right, let's vote. So that is carried unanimously. That's great. All right, so now we're going to move on to item 2.2, which is the Reserves Act 1977 easement over Alexandra Road play area in Hataitai. And I'd like to invite Councillor O'Neill to introduce this report.
Sure, happy to introduce this paper as well. The owners of 21 Alexandra Road have requested that Council allow them to construct a stormwater pipe in the adjacent reserve land. The pipe will manage stormwater runoff that will be generated from a proposed new infill dwelling on their property. And this is a pretty straightforward paper, but just to signal that the suburb of Hataitai is actually used to be a wonderful blooming valley with many, many streams through it as well. And so we know that for now, the way that we handle the management of our water is putting them in pipes and helping that get over different parts of the environment. But in the future, just to signal that I'd really like us to look to more natural management of water and in the way of regenerating the stream in the area as well. But yeah, really happy to put the paper. Would Deputy Mayor Free or Councillor Rush like to second? Deputy Mayor Free.
I'd be very happy to second this. I do know the area. It's a beautiful little underused play area, but I think it's perfectly appropriate that we grant an easement for the water pipes to go through this. And I guess, looking at it, it's a bit consistent with us wanting small housing in this actually really quite desirable area too. So got no problems with it, very happy to approve it. Thank you again to officers who've obviously put the thought into the technical side of how this would work.
Would anyone else like to speak to this paper? No? Okay. Now that it's been moved and seconded, do you need a right of reply? Probably not, because there's not really anything to reply to. So we'll now put that to the vote. So that's also carried unanimously. I'd like to move on to item 3.1, which is these are the CCO, Council-Controlled Organisation Subcommittee meeting reports. So we've got the Letter of Expectation to Wellington Regional Economic Development Agency, which is part A of this, and then we'll do part B separately. So Councillor Condi, if you'd like to introduce part A, that'd be great.
Thank you. All right, so we had a lovely CCO meeting with all of our CCOs coming along to talk to us recently, where we've gone through and recommended up to SPC the key messages to go into our letters of expectation. So as you will all be aware, we write letters of expectation once a year to our CCOs, telling them what kind of outcomes we want them to deliver, and then they will use those letters of expectation to prepare their statement of intent for the year, which will come back to us as in draft form for us to approve in around March next year. So that's what these key messages are, is just sending out a signal to them about what we would like them to be working on, and they will then come back to us with a bit more of a plan worked up for us to then provide feedback on. There are two additional recommendations here that have been brought in at Councillor Paul's excellent suggestion, thank you. Just trying to strengthen some of the messaging around Te Atakura and the important role that our CCOs are going to have to play in this. As we know, Te Atakura isn't just about council's own carbon emissions, it's about the carbon emissions for the whole city. And our CCOs are an important part of that. And I think Wellington NZ in particular has really well positioned to help other organisations in our city on their carbon transition journey. So this is what we're looking at. Just to give you an update on the process, as you all know, we're not the sole shareholder of Wellington NZ. We are joint shareholders with other councils in the region. And the letter of expectation is actually approved by the Wellington Regional Strategy Committee. That meeting has taken place, but there were a number of suggestions that were being made to the changes in the letter, and the letter is going to be recirculated to those committee members before being signed off, and that process hasn't happened yet. So we haven't quite got our timing right on this, because ideally we would have had this meeting before we'd gone to the Wellington Regional Strategy Committee, but I think given the process that's in front of us, we can definitely include this, and we're in a fortunate position that our mayor, who isn't able to be here right now, but our mayor is actually the chair of that committee who's going to sign off that letter. So moving these recommendations today can be taken into account in that way as well. So thank you very much. And Councillor Paul, you're going to second the paper?
Okay, so would anyone else like to speak to this? She's going to reserve her right. So Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. Amendments are commendable, but I think it's really important to ensure that when we look at the letter of expectations that we're setting, that we do ensure that it's cohesive and not one particular area goes down into further detail. I would like us, before we get into this sort of level of recommendation, that there's a broader look at what we're expecting of Wellington NZ, and there probably will be changes to what's been put into the paper. If I take into account the work that's underway around the economic development strategy, and part of that strategy, I personally am hoping that we will see guidance not only externally but also internally with our own organisation of how we support economic development activities, and that needs to translate to Wellington NZ, which is our delivery arm in the economic development space. So in essence, it's okay, but actually I don't think we should be going down and moving this type of amendment for this, but I think it's already included, and we need to make sure that we are keeping to that governance level, so I won't be supporting these amendments.
Councillor Pennant.
Oh, I will strongly be supporting them. So thank you, Councillor Paul and Councillor Condi. I think it's very appropriate that we take a little bit of practical action the day after the country has finally declared a climate emergency. Look, unless we change the economy, we have zero chance of making progress on climate change. It is absolutely critical. So I'm glad that that we're getting a really strong alignment with Wellington, New Zealand. If they are really a true economic development agency, they will be able to have some impact in terms of the way that we run our economy. And it's wonderful also to see waste minimisation, or maybe Councillor Foon's not here, zero waste is possibly the language that I would prefer. But look, the progress that we've made basically even over the last 5 years in terms of trying to get that alignment is really significant. So I am very happy about this.
Councillor Rush?
Yeah, hi. I'm sorry, I'm sort of playing a bit catch up on these amendments. Madam Chair. So it's a bit confusing. So the bullets, there's 2 bullets. Some has got some yellow highlighting in it. So I'm just looking at the email that was circulated earlier. Am I to read it that the yellow highlight is the new addition?
Councillor Rush, Cyrus is just about to email it to you. It does look slightly different to that, so we'll just take a moment. Can you just do group councillors for that, actually? What we might just do is take 2 minutes so that you can read it before you speak, so that you know what you're speaking to. So
Much
if everyone
appreciated.
just takes a couple of minutes to read the amendment, and then we'll come back. can you make sure the live
Yeah.
stream is back on? Thank you. Okay, Councillor Rush, off you go.
So I don't have any fundamental objection to this, but there is a conflation here between reducing carbon or methane emissions and waste. We seem to be supposing that all waste creates emissions, and actually most of it doesn't. Only the organic stuff does. And I have advocated successfully at Vic University. I don't know if Andrew's still there, but his colleague Dave Frame gave me an extremely good mark for my paper on the proposal that all products from trees, such as paper, should actually be buried, which sequesters carbon. So in that sense, that would, be a different sort of style of treating waste. So I'm not going to have a fundamental objection to these. The other point I would like maybe perhaps Councillor Pannett to confirm, I thought our goal by 2030 was a 50% reduction, not 43%, but I might have that wrong. But anyway, I do just want to make the point that waste contains a lot of stuff. Plastic cups, for example, do not create emissions. They create waste. A lot of energy goes into make them, but when they get buried, they don't actually create emissions. So in that sense, dealing with those and paper and even timber products that don't deteriorate because they've been tannalized, don't actually do anything to achieve our emissions reduction targets.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Councillor Young.
So just very briefly, I have a philosophical issue with last-minute amendments unless they really are kind of absolutely urgent amendments to clarify things. And of course, I do feel that we could be accused of virtue signalling as we have failed to deliver on the promises of all this. So, I do believe our role is governance, and I think getting down to this level of detail with the council-controlled organisations is beyond our mandate, so I won't be supporting the amendments. So 2 reasons, too last minute, and we need to stick to high level.
Deputy Mayor Free.
Yeah, look, I've had a careful look at it, and I don't think it's actually new per se. It's a little bit of a clarification of what it might mean to ask Wellington NZ to do a bit more with the carbon to support our First to Zero and waste minimisation initiatives. But I actually think it's important. It isn't in the weeds. It's actually quite a high level to be reminding people what our aspirations actually are and our targets actually are. I think this is really important too with the mode shift, 40% mode shift that we are articulating in every single transport document, basically. And until you keep articulating it and hammering it home, it doesn't actually take root and start to translate into real action. So I'm going to support this. I can see arguments that it's not adding much, but I think it's just reiterating the actual targets, and I think that is valuable.
That's all that's on our list. So, Councillor Paul, you can speak now.
Yeah, kia ora. Look, I wasn't expecting this to go from a CCO conversation into a climate change conversation. That's all right. It is important, and it is pertinent given the government's declaration of a climate emergency yesterday. But also there was an article published this week on Newsroom by Mark Delder about, which I think really clearly articulated the public's confusion and lack of clarity around how exactly we are proposing to hit that 43% reduction target by 2030, because of course 19% of that is unaccounted for because we actually need to collaborate with and partner with stakeholders across the city in order to hit that, because obviously we don't have control over things like the private sector and other big parties such as the airport, Centreport, the universities, the hospitals and all of those stakeholders. So this is about mentioning and talking about the role which we all have to play in order to get our capital city to reaching those targets. And I think that article and the interest generated around it really emphasised that people and Wellingtonians are looking closer and scrutinising our actions at how we actually do intend to hit those targets. So that is what this is about. And I guess just to respond to some of the points raised in the debate, which I thought was quite good, I think that the point is that Te Atukura was already talked about in this list of recommendations. So this was simply me as the portfolio holder having a look at those and and trying to assess whether those are clear enough in order to be directive enough for these organisations to be able to help us to achieve those targets. I felt like it wasn't. I felt like it was saying we expect Wellington, NZ and other stakeholders to hit our targets. It didn't mention any support we might provide them, but also our plan doesn't actually articulate how businesses and the private sector can reduce their own emissions. So this is actually talking about what are those targets that we expect them to hit, and you know, offering some support to them in order to develop their own plans to reach their own targets as well. So I think that was important, that we're not just expecting people to do this, but we're actually meeting them halfway and talking about how we can support them in that. And I think it was also important to be going into a bit more detail too with the mention of the 3 strategies that are mentioned within these recommendations as well. It's important to note that Te Atakura is actually more prominent in the hierarchy of strategies and plans than the economic development strategies and other strategies. So it's really important that it's given that prominence as well. And I think just on Councillor Rush's points about the waste minimisation nuance, you know, yep, that might be true, but, you know, if you want to bring that forward, you can do your own amendments and really clearly articulate that yourself. That's totally up to you. And, yeah. So thanks, Jenny, for the opportunity for that, and thanks, Moana, for working on this. You know, actually, I signalled the intent to do this at the start of the week, but obviously because of the way that processes go, you've only learnt about it this morning. So although it seems last minute, it's actually been a lot of work put into this with our partners and with various staff across the organisation. So, and that's part of our job, is to be agile and think about things like this and make decisions on the fly. So there we go.
Kia ora. Councillor Condi, right of reply.
Thank you, Chair. All right. I think, thanks everyone for the debate. I think, you know, absolutely that you've received them a bit late, and that's not a great position to be in, but as... Oh. No, because I'm moving it as
Councillor
one of the
Condi moved it
recommendations.
as
So
a...
you could ask to take it separately.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm moving...
No, because Councillor Condi
No,
said when
I
she was
moved it
moving
as-
it that she was moving it with that. It has officer support, and Councillor Condi did articulate that at the beginning.
Sure. That, you know, the governance issue here is obviously that Te Atakura is one of our most important strategies, and I think this is at the governance level. As we've said, that this is, you know, this was already in the key messages for this letter, and we've just strengthened it. And I think it's not that this area has been given greater prominence than other areas. I think it's just that it's being given some attention. You know, I think we're really excited to see the economic development strategy. Everybody at the table is excited to see what's coming out of that work. And one of the things that we really see is and we discussed at the Wellington Regional Strategy Committee, is the opportunity for green businesses and the low carbon transition to be an economic opportunity for the city. So I actually think that this will align really well and be cohesive with that piece of work. I think, you know, as you said, Councillor Panna, changing the economy is essential to carbon reduction. If we don't change the economy, then it doesn't matter what else we do. And Wellington NZ is in a really great position to help us with that. Not only do we have this opportunity around trying to develop green businesses and turning the transition an economic opportunity, but they also help all kinds of other businesses like physiotherapists and IT firms and accountants and all these other businesses with their marketing and their accounting. And while they're working with those companies on their marketing and their accounting, they can also start supporting them with conversations about their low carbon transition and a waste minimisation journey. Just to acknowledge your point, Councillor Rush, you're absolutely right that we have kind of artificially put emissions and waste together in this space. I think that was mostly, we saw them as two kind of sustainability related things, so we put them together in a bullet point. I didn't actually think that closely about the fact that you know, waste isn't necessarily directly connected to emissions. It was more just that they're both kind of sustainability initiatives, and so we had them in the same bullet point. So I think, you know, thanks everyone for the debate. I think it is a really exciting opportunity for our city to see what we can do with Wellington NZ in this space to work towards the low carbon transition as an economic opportunity for green businesses, but also how do we support just ordinary businesses going about their you know, their daily lives? How do we help them on their carbon journey? Because a lot of them will not have the resources that they will need to tackle that. So kia ora, thank you very much, and let's vote.
Right, councillors, so we're going to take 2 and 3 separately. So we'll do all of the other ones, which is 1 through to just number 1. 1 through to 1. So if you can vote on number 1. Yeah, they can see. That's our pen and Fitzsimons. Yours haven't worked. Might be a bit sensitive. Well, not sensitive enough. Hang on, what's the outcome? Oh, carried. Oh, thank you. Was that unanimous? Okay. All right. So we'll take 2 and 3 together because I assume that those who are voting against are voting against both. Okay. So, and we'll take a division. Thank you, Councillor Paul. So that's carried. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Condi, if you'd like to introduce item B, which is the letters of expectation to council-controlled organisations.
Thank you. So all of these, it's basically the exact same set of recommendations, but we're taking these separately because, as I said, Wellington NZ, what we just discussed, is actually our recommendations to the Wellington Regional Strategy Committee. Whereas these, the letters of expectation for these CCOs are signed off by us, specifically me as the chair of the CCO committee. So we're just taking these ones separately from that. And the amendments that you'll see 2 and 3 are identical, apart from the fact that I've changed Wellington NZ to CCOs.
And I imagine we don't need to
so hopefully we can kind of take all of the debate that we've had as read
around that.
Around that. Just want to say that one of the things we've really been working hard on at the CCO committee this year is trying to elevate our partnership with our CCOs from what was more of a kind of transactional accountability relationship up to more of a strategic partnership. And that's really just a reflection of the journey that we've been on as a council in terms of our governance role with the CCOs. And that's one of our key goals for when we're writing the letters of expectation this year is that we will kind of elevate to that more strategic partnership conversation, which is one of the reasons that we have moved the key messages rather than bringing you the actual letter, so that we can actually, when we write the letter, be a bit more work in a bit more of our strategic partnership angles with the tone of the letter. We've had great feedback from all of our CCOs. They're all doing amazing work this year. They're all ahead of their COVID-affected targets, which is really brilliant to see. They're all working really, really hard. And so this letter of expectation is kind of setting us up for next year about thinking about what does recovery look like in our CCOs, many of whom are affected by tourism. And so have been, from that point of view, severely affected by the COVID restrictions. So the letter of expectation is important for them to give them some shape around thinking about that.
Who would like to second this one? Deputy Mayor Free, and you'd like to speak? I'm assuming not relitigating.
Very long, but I actually just want to say that through the process of these letters of expectation, in particular the Basin Reserve Trust, there were some things I wasn't thinking were being run as well as they could have been. And I have to say that through this process, a lot has improved actually. And the beers at the Basin was held last weekend. I wasn't here, but I came back and the Basin looked beautiful. It just looked beautiful. It didn't even look like an event had been held. The grass was intact and, the Basin itself is presenting so much better. And so I want to pay tribute actually to the staff who've worked and the Basin Reserve Trust who've worked on that particular one. And honestly, the zoo is looking beautiful as well. So those are the two I have the most to do with. I think the process might seem a bit cumbersome with statements of intent and letters of expectation, but what I can say is over the years I've been involved with this, I think it's actually a model which does work, and good to hear from the chair that that's becoming a more meaningful relationship as well, not so transactional. So I'm happy to second, don't have too much else to say.
Is there any further debate on this? Councillor Calvert.
It's good to hear Councillor Condi saying that we want to, we're elevating to focus on strategic partnerships and obviously be strategic in our approaches. And I think that's really important to ensure that we don't get down into the management of these organisations either, in terms of detailing aspects right down to what sort of programs they should be running. We need to make sure that we are setting clear objectives at that top level. Our relevant policies should have any particular detail, and that probably supports my previous comments as well. So there's lots of things that we could be expecting more of our CCOs, but we need to balance. We need to balance with their capacity and their resources and how much we're prepared to fund them as well in terms of this. Very commendable about climate change or crisis, but I'd just like to point out that we also probably immediate issue we've got at the moment is housing, and housing is actually an associated economic development activity. So look, there's lots of things we need to do, but we need to make sure that we are focusing the organisations on their clear objectives and that they are funded appropriately to deliver what we expect. That's it. Thank you.
Are there any further speakers? Would you like? Oh, Councillor Paul.
Just very quickly, just note, I know no one really watches these anyway, but that a few of these CCOs are already carbon neutral accredited. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we are aware of that, and accessibility accredited, yes. So they're doing a great job already. So just wanted to acknowledge that.
Kia ora. Councillor Rush.
Yeah, thanks very much. And further to Councillor Paul's comments, it's been a very difficult year for all of us, and the CCOs have done outstandingly. And it's really, really refreshing to hear them come and talk to us and tell us about their struggles and how their solutions have been developed and are going forward. But again, I won't be supporting the amendments for the same reasons as before. I would like to have had a better go at the waste sort of aspect of it. There just hasn't been time.
Thank you. Councillor Condi, would you like a right of reply?
Very briefly, thanks everyone. I think, thanks Councillor Calvert. I think we have worked really hard to make sure that these letters of expectation are at a strategic level rather than a management level. As you say, we're kind of setting clear outcome objectives here without telling them how to go about doing what it is we would like to see them deliver. And you're absolutely right, we have to balance capacity and funding, because we've sent them a strong message that there is not going to be more money, because we all know what our budget looks like for next year. So we're very aware that they are going to be facing some funding constraints as well. And that's really where as we work through this process, they'll come back with a draft SOI for us, which will be within the budgets that they have. They'll be able to show us what they think they can deliver, and that will be part of a negotiation at that point early in the new year. And thank you, Councillor Paul. I was also going to acknowledge the fact that actually many of our CCOs are a long way ahead of us on their carbon journey, and that several of them have been, certified carbon neutral for quite some time. And so, potentially when we talk about a strategic partnership in this space, that doesn't necessarily mean us leading them. It means them leading us and us working together to see what we can learn from their journeys and where they've been moving ahead of us. So that's a really important part of that. That goal that we have to be working with our CCOs. And thank you, Councillor Rush. I agree. I think our CCOs have been doing an amazing job in really difficult times this year. We are all really, really lucky to have organisations that are really well managed and well governed, which has just shone through in a really crisis time like this. So that's just been really wonderful. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, councillors. We'll now put that to the vote. Oh, yeah, well, I imagine that you want it taken separately, so we'll do number 1 first.
Yep.
Oh, man, my thing's not working. So that's carried unanimously. And then we'll take items 2 and 3 together, and we'll take a division again. Let's just see who's consistent. Who is there consistency? Hey! So that's carried. Thank you very much. So just to let you know that item 3.3, the report of the Grants Subcommittee meeting on the 2nd of December, at yesterday's meeting, the Grants Subcommittee resolved not to make any recommendations to the Strategy and Policy Committee. So some more work is going to happen in the background by officers before something comes to the committee. So that's us finished. So ko mutu i tēnei hui, i tui te karakia mutunga? No. No. There were amendments to that to ask for more information, basically. So there's nothing to send up because it's got more work to be done. Cool. So, i tui te karakia mutunga. Unu hia, ki te uru tapu nui. Kia wātia, kia māma, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua. I te ara takatū. Koe rā e rongo, whakaerea ake ki runga. Kia wātia, ai rā, kua wātia. Just, if you can just hang for a second, councillors, so